Hi, Teresa here from Blind Spots, and today we're going to be looking at modern warfare's new kill chain. So when people talk about modern warfare, they usually start with the machines, particularly now the drones, the AI required or behind that, jamming capabilities, the autonomy of the machine. But as interesting as the machines and the tech are, what is as interesting is the changes in the kill chain. But what's a kill chain? A kill chain in warfare refers to the process of targeting and executing military objectives, so it's find, identify, tracking, deciding, striking and assessing the effectiveness of the strike. The kill chain isn't a new military concept. Warfare has always had some version of the kill chain. What is new is the technology now sitting inside every stage of that chain and the very different industrial backbone required to keep that chain functioning. Ukraine, for example, says it's already using an integrated drone infantry warfare system, and recent reporting on a Starlink outage disrupting US Navy unmanned vessel tests shows how dependent modern systems can become on fragile connectivity. So if you want to understand where modern and future warfare is heading, you don't need to understand all of the different types of drones and systems, though that does help. Start with the kill chain. And the kill chain, again, is find, identify, track, decide, strike, assess. First, you find a target. That process now involves ISR drones. ISR stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance. Persistent surveillance, satellite feeds, sensors and battlefield networks that can see far more for far longer than older forces could. Then you identify what the target actually is. That increasingly involves software, machine-assisted classification, image recognition, and faster data processing. Though humans still matter, because machines can be wrong, then you come to the tracking part of the kill chain, and that's where things get more fragile. Tracking depends on continuity, on links staying alive, signals holding, feeds not being jammed, and systems not losing the thread. Then, once that's all okay, comes to the decision. The decision may still be and is still taken by a human, but the amount of information now flowing into command systems is much greater, much more complex, and the pressure to process it quickly is much higher. Then you strike. That strike might come from artillery corrected by a drone feed, from an FPV drone, which is a first-person view drone, from a loitering munition, or from a more traditional system now plugged into real-time data. And then you assess. Once the strike is being completed, did the strike work? Was it effective? Is the target still active? Do you need to hit it again? Can you retask immediately? That is the kill chain. And what has changed is that more and more of that chain is now being filled by drones, software, sensors, communications links, and electronic warfare. So it's not just that there are drones now, or that drones are becoming more and more important. It's that modern warfare is becoming a competition over whose kill chain is faster, more connected, more adaptable, and harder to break. That is why it helps to understand the machines, but only in terms of what they do inside that chain. As we said, an ISR drone helps find and track. A first-person view drone, FPV drone, is usually a relatively cheap attack system, often guided by an operator through live video, used at the strike end of the chain. A loitering munition, including what people often call Shahid-type drones, is a one-way attack system, used to hit targets directly or saturate defences. They self-destruct on impact. Mail and hail drones are longer endurance surveillance or strike platforms, sitting higher and staying up longer. Mail is medium altitude, long endurance, and hail is high altitude, long endurance. So electronic warfare is the fight over the invisible layer, signals, radar, navigation, communications, control links. That's not all new, it's just the way is new. Warfare has always been dependent on communication, signals, navigation, but it's the technology that is being deployed to do this nowadays. Now that is different. Autonomy within this kill chain means systems are doing more with less direct human input, especially when links are weak or degraded. So yes, machines matter more. Technology matters more than it did before, but only because of where they sit in the kill chain. And this is where the deeper shift starts, because what's changing isn't just the kill chain. It's what the kill chain depends on. So older conventional warfare was already very, very logistics heavy. I mean, at all points of the history of warfare. It needed troops needed food and fuel, ammunition, transport, spare parts, replacement personnel, medical evacuations, and industrial scale to support the war effort. But much of its combat power was more mechanically resilient. A rifle still works if the network dies. A machine gun still works if the network dies. A soldier can still move and attack if GPS is jammed. A tank can still be lethal even in a degraded data environment. Modern warfare still needs all those old things: fuel, steel, explosives, transport, and manpower. Of course, but it increasingly depends on a different industrial supply chain as well. That involves semiconductors, sensors, batteries, circuit boards, communications hardware, software, relay systems, signal infrastructure, and the ability to repair and replace delicate electronics quickly. Russia has warned that Western drone production remains exposed to Chinese origin inputs and electronics-heavy bottlenecks, which is exactly the sort of dependency this shift creates. That is the real material shift. So modern warfare doesn't remove the logistical burden of warfare, but it does change the supply chain beneath combat power. And once you see that, electronic warfare stops looking like some niche technical sideshow and becomes more central. Because if your kill chain depends on communications, radar, navigation, data links, and signal integrity, then the enemy does not only try to destroy your weapon, they try to break the chain. That is what jamming is, degrading or blocking signals. That is also what spoofing is, feeding false information into a system so the system thinks something untrue is real. That's what counter-jamming is all about, trying to keep your own systems functioning despite interference from the enemy. Rand's recent analysis of the war in Ukraine makes the point very clearly. Control of the electromagnetic battle space matters because it's where communications are jammed, drones are blinded, and precision systems are thrown off course. And that changes the vulnerability map as well. In older warfare, you attack bridges, fuel depots, rail lines, troop concentration, ammunition stores, and transport routes, supply lines. And you still do. But now you also look at things like relay nodes, data links, comms systems, satellite dependence, specialist electronics production, repair chains, and all the industrial bottlenecks behind them. Because the smarter and more networked the system becomes, the more tempting its dependencies become as well. And that is what the recent Starlink Navy SEAL example reveals so well. Not that modern war is high-tech, we already knew that, but more that high-tech war can be highly capable and highly fragile at the same time. To say that, plainly, modern warfare is reorganizing combat around a faster, more electronic kill chain and around a different, more specialized and more fragile industrial supply chain beneath it. And that is the major shift. And that matters because this is where the trend is heading, towards more integration, more drones working with infantry, more real-time coordination based on real-time images, more dependence on software and sensor fusion, more pressure on the electromagnetic spectrum. Ukraine's move toward integrated drone infantry combat is one sign of that direction already. Modern and future warfare is not about gadgets and robots. It's not just a story about drones either. It's not just about drones either. Modern warfare isn't just producing new kinds of weapons. It's producing a new kind of kill chain and a new kind of industrial dependence that needs to support it. So the question is no longer just who can strike, it's who can keep the strike system connected, protected, repaired and replaced under constant disruption from the enemy. That is the deeper change.